The following is brought to you in part by a grant from the Foundation for White Well-Being.
Look into this dark, unforgiving glass eye, the mesh of the microphone. Tell it your deepest thoughts, hopes, fears, and desires. We will take these emotions, turn them, and feed them back to you, for we have goals that your feelings will assist. This is how we rule. From the shadows, playing your emotions like puppet strings, we lead you to destinations that we have prepared, and you willingly oblige, thinking these decisions to be your own. When you do as we wish, we reward you, and when you go against us, we punish you. In a million subtle ways, we influence your supposedly free choice. By this method, we rule over a population convinced that they are the masters of their own destiny. Welcome to the Empire of Lies.
Hello, yes, welcome indeed back to the Empire of Lies. I'm Yiz the Eunuch. My main man co-host here is Newsfist.
Hey everyone.
I hope you're all doing well this evening. We come to you tonight with a presentation I've been wanting to get to for some time, and with two-tier Kier being so popular, we figured this week was the week. So we are doing our Anarcho-Tyranny episode tonight. We might touch back on Anarcho-Tyranny and Sam Francis at another time, but we have a lot to say about it tonight, and I hope you guys will enjoy the presentation. As always, I like to remind you this is a prepared presentation. We won't be stopping in the middle to do super chats and paid chats and things, but we will get to those at the end of the hour. So for the next 45 to 50 minutes, we will do our presentation, and then we will see what you guys have to say. During the course of the stream, if you would like to send us your ideas and thoughts about this subject matter, or just share your experiences with us and want it read out on stream, please consider using Entropy. That is the pinned chat. I like the good folks who run Entropy. That is the way I prefer to receive paid chats. You can also send in rants on Rumble, hyper chats on Odyssey, and of course, you can send in short messages on Cash App and PayPal. And if you like the work that I do, please consider becoming a monthly supporter over on Subscribestar. And you can send in tips on Subscribestar as well, which are like super chats. All of the tips that I bring in, paid chats, hyper chats, etc., for the Empire of Lies stream, I split 50-50 with my good friend Chris here, because neither of us like working for free. So if you could throw us a few dollars, we would both be deeply appreciative. So the term Anarcho-Tyranny I like a lot. It perfectly sums up the legal and responsibility model, or we should say lack of responsibility model, as applied, which is the type of governance that we all live under and labor under today. And Chris will be getting into some particulars about it, but I do want to remind you guys, everything is not without hope. We're going to talk about some really dark, ugly stuff tonight, but it's best to not be black-pilled and just understand that governments have always been kind of oppressive and bad. There's been a lot of evil, horrible regimes, plagues, wars, things in the past, and look where we are today. We still have a people, we still have technology, we still have food to eat. So, despite talking about this really dark stuff tonight, do your best to just, understand it academically and understand it wisely. But, don't be too black-pilled. It's important to stay hopeful. So, and I know that that's hard, especially in the UK right now, but you got to be reasonable and be realistic that the world's not ending tomorrow. Even if the UK government does a full-on mega communism, You will survive. There are things that you can do. Everything there is things are not without hope. I'll just put it that way. I just want to preface the stream with that before we get started. So that's the only thing I had that I wanted to say before we got started. Chris, is there anything you would like to share or say before we get into the presentation?
No, not really. Things things are a bit dicey in the UK at the moment. Not gonna lie. And this presentation is a good explanation of why and sort of how we got here. So yeah, I'll just start, I think.
All right, let's get into it then.
As I write this script, riots are gripping the United Kingdom. The entire country is convulsed in an outpouring of anger, fear, and frustration. The spark that lit the dry tinder was the knife attack on a children's dance class by a second-generation Rwandan immigrant, Axel Rudakubana. Despite many attestations to the contrary by left-wing journalists at The Guardian and very cleverly phrased government messaging, there has still, over a week later, been no announcement of the motive behind the attack. There are persistent rumors doing the rounds, but I am not going to mention them due to the recent oppressive environment that has been foisted on the UK internet. Whether these rumors are true or not, I cannot say. However, it seems certain that if the killer was white or if his motive fitted with the current government narrative, for example, if he could be painted as, quote, far right, then this information would have been released to the public. There has, in the intervening period, been a concerted effort to portray the killer as a good boy, who was troubled with mental health issues, and the media have continued to circulate a photo of him when he was 11 years old, as opposed to using the much more accurate courtroom sketch, which paints him in a much more frightening and realistic light. There are no up-to-date photos of the killer circulating, at least as far as I have seen. In the intervening period, there has been sustained rioting and violence across the UK as the native British population pushed back against the horrors of uncontrolled immigration. A policy, it seems, which has been decided by the United Nations, and thus which no British government is prepared to oppose. Despite the efforts of the counter-jihad network to reframe the violence in the context of anti-Islamism, the true driving force is mass immigration, and also what has come to be known in the UK as two-tiered policing. There is another name for this phenomenon, anarcho-tyranny, which is the subject of tonight's talk. The modern term was coined in 2005 by Sam Francis, who was an editor at the Washington Times before he was fired for wrongthink and then monstered by the Southern Poverty Law Center for being a racist. Indeed, if you look up anarcho-tyranny on Wikipedia, it redirects to a page about Francis, which tells you in lurid detail how much of a white supremacist, racist right-winger he was, before giving you a neutered and watered-down definition of anarcho-tyranny. We can deduce from this that the concept of anarcho-tyranny is something that the left very much does not wish discussed, which is why we are discussing it. The basic idea behind anarcho-tyranny is that the state stops enforcing laws against criminals at the same time as it makes ever more coercive laws against the law-abiding population. Every effort is made to excuse the actions of the criminal population, while simultaneously every action of the law-abiding population, particularly in relation to self-defense, is demonized and harshly controlled. Actually, if we can, in smallen years, here we go, right.
In Smollen!
To quote Sam Francis, what we have in this country today, then, he's talking about the United States, is both anarchy, the failure of the state to enforce the laws, and at the same time, tyranny, the enforcement of laws by the state for oppressive purposes. The criminalization of the law-abiding and innocent through exorbitant taxation, bureaucratic regulation, invasion of privacy, and the engineering of social institutions, such as the family and local schools. The imposition of thought control through, quote, sensitivity training and multiculturalist curricula. Hate crime laws, gun control laws that punish or disarm otherwise law-abiding citizens, but have no impact on violent criminals who get guns illegally, and a vast labyrinth of other measures. In a word, anarcho-tyranny. Francis goes on to list a number of examples of US state and local governments being much more interested in extracting taxes from the law-abiding community than punishing the criminals that prey upon them. Since this article was written in 2005, what he describes seems almost quaint. So far have things progressed since then. Anarcho-tyranny, of course, is not confined to the United States. This is Francis, I'm quoting here. In Western Europe, by some estimates, there are some 800 people now in prison for what can only be called, quote, thought crimes, for violations of the laws of various countries against racial defamation, usually using racial or ethnic epithets or slurs, denying the Holocaust, complaining about immigration, talking about racial differences, and even criticizing non-Western religions. Last December, British police arrested two leaders of the anti-immigration British National Party, Nick Griffin and the BNP's founder, John Tyndall, because hidden cameras, not for speeders or for collecting revenue, but for spying, had recorded them saying unkind things about Islam. Mr. Griffin reportedly called it, quote, a wicked religion. The West Yorkshire police boasted that they had deployed a team of officers for the Griffin case, 5 days a week, 10 hours a day. As Rod Little, a reporter for the London Spectator, commented on an article about the case. In 2017, in the UK, there were over 3,300 people arrested for thought crimes alone. The figures across Europe must be much higher. To give some contrast, in the same year, there were only 500 people arrested in the whole of Russia for such offences, and it is likely that a significant number of them were employed by Western NGOs or other assorted glow operations. This is according to Konstantin Kisin from Trigonometry. However, this was before the outbreak of the Ukraine war, and numbers may have risen significantly since then. Data on the number of prosecutions in the UK under the, quote, Malicious Communications Act are no longer being reported. The last reliable data is from 2021, where there were 4,435 prosecutions. This is from ChatGPT. I asked it to do a bit of digging on this, and it replied, over the past 5 years, prosecutions under the Malicious Communications Act in the UK have varied annually. Here is a breakdown of the numbers by year based on available data. 2019, approximately 3,200 prosecutions. 2020, 3,437 prosecutions. 2021, 4,435 prosecutions. And there is no data for 2022, 2023, or I assume for 2024. These figures in the... Sorry?
May I ask a question about these data, please?
Yes.
When you did your data collection here, is there even demographic data available for this, or does the UK not track that for this kind of prosecution or crime?
I am not sure.
Because
I
sight
have yet
unseen.
to...
Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
No, I have yet to dig in fully into the numbers for this. I'm just trying to get a sort of broad view and sort of demonstrate a trend that up until data stopped being published, the numbers were sort of rising continually. And might I note that this was happening under the so-called conservative government, which,
yes,
although were not conservative, at least presumably had some break on their ambitions to stifle speech, a restriction which the new Labour government seemingly has none at all.
Then I tell you what, then my gut instinct on this is, if there is demographic data on this, the data would probably show that a large, massive, overwhelming percentage of these prosecutions are against the native white British. That's what I would imagine.
I would suspect that you are correct there as well.
But
yes,
I might look into that for another stream then. But I'm sorry for the interruption. I was just curious.
Of course, these prosecutions are not being applied equally. No one was prosecuted for saying that all white people should be killed during Black Lives Matter, or for encouraging hate against the English by saying that whites are responsible for all evils in the world. On the other hand, in 2017, a 19-year-old girl was charged after she posted the lyrics to a Snoop Dogg song on her Instagram page in tribute to a friend of hers that had died in a road accident. An anonymous screenshot was sent to the police, who then rewarded such snitching by arresting the girl in question. This is the newspaper article. A teenager who posted rap lyrics which included racist language on Instagram has been found guilty of sending a grossly offensive message. Chelsea Russell, 19, from Liverpool, posted the lyric from Snoop Dogg's I'm Trippin' to pay tribute to a boy who died in a road crash, the court heard. Russell argued it was not offensive, but was handed a community order. Prosecutors said her sentence was increased from a fine to community order as it was a hate crime. She was charged after Merseyside police were anonymously sent a screenshot of her update. Liverpool Justice Centre, sitting at Sefton Magistrates Court, heard that Russell posted the lyrics to her account after the death of a 13-year-old friend in a road accident in 2017, the Crown Prosecution Service said. Need I remind you that Keir Starmer, our current Prime Minister, used to head the Crown Prosecution Service. The words Russell used on her account contained a racial label which some people find extremely offensive. The screenshot was passed to Hate Crime Unit PC Dominic Walker, who told the court that the term was, quote, grossly offensive to her as a black woman and to the general community. Prosecutor Angela Conlon said that Russell's defense also argued her profile, quote, wasn't public, but it had been proved in court that anyone could access it and thus see the offensive language. She said prosecutors also sourced case law that showed that posting the profile on her account constituted sending it and making it public. She was found guilty of sending a grossly offensive message by a public communication and given an 8-week community order placed on an 8-week curfew and told to pay costs of £500 and an £85 victim surcharge. It goes without saying, of course, that the girl in question was white. Had she been black, there would have been no problem. This kind of treatment was widely remarked upon in 2017, but things have now moved so far that such behavior from the police is expected as the norm. At the same time as police forces across the country have been supporting leftist social causes, such as kneeling for BLM and supporting the trans movement, it was recently revealed that the London Metropolitan Police had failed to even identify one suspect related to property crime in 3 years. To quote another newspaper article, the Metropolitan Police, that is the London Police, has not identified a single suspect in investigations into neighbourhood crimes, such as phone and bike thefts, burglaries, and vehicle crimes in more than 160 areas for the past 3 years. An analysis of unsolved crimes in Britain has revealed that Britain's biggest police force is failing to tackle a range of offences, while brazen criminals say they do not fear the police. Channel 4 dispatchers found 167 areas across England and Wales where the police had not identified a single suspect for neighbourhood crimes between 2021 and 2023. All but one of them were in the Mets area in London.
I'd like for you to pause here, and I want to talk about this. When you read something like this, it's important to stop and take a breath and realize that just how shocking and terrible this is. Because we know that, especially in London, there are thousands of miscreants, ne'er-do-wells, criminals. And I'm not even talking about the so-called rape gangs, right? Like, that's not what we're even talking about. Just petty, scrupulous idiots that have been mass imported from around the world, especially Africa, that just run amok and do anything they want, terrorize people, beat people up, steal things, break into houses. This isn't even talking about any type of race war or anything like that. We're just talking about immigrants that shouldn't be here, that don't know how to act, that break stuff, beat people up, and steal things. And in 3 years, there's been not a single identification or prosecution on any of these people in 3 years in London. How many thousands of cases do you think have gone unsolved, Chris? How many thousands?
Oh, I wouldn't even begin to know. People have just stopped reporting crimes. Honestly, no one in London bothers to even call the police anymore. Like, what's the point?
That's the answer. That's the answer I thought you would give, because that backs up the point, the why behind Anarcho-Tyranny, the demoralization, yes, the hopelessness, the breaking of the people. Because if you don't even think that there's anyone that you can talk to, anyone you can go to of any position of authority that will help you, then why would you have any hope? Why would you want to build a family or a church or have children? Like, this is an absolute spiritual and mental war against white people, especially the white British in London here. Because when you allow or purposefully import these demographics of people that you know are going to do this stuff, and then you don't prosecute them, it's only a small step away from the people that are organizing this being the ones that have their hands bloodied in this crime, so to speak. They
Look,
know
to,
what,
to,
yeah.
to be fair, right? This falls upon all of the people of London, not just the whites. London is a very diverse city, as I'm
Mhm.
sure you are aware. I would imagine that the groups that it does not fall upon are those that are strongly concentrated in a certain area, who have strong kinship, and probably those as well with gang involvement, because those with gang involvement, you would be able to say to the gangs, don't mess around on this street, or we'll get you.
Yeah.
There would be some potential comeuppance for the normal citizens, the normal law-abiding citizens. There is basically no recourse.
I'm old. I forgot that London's not a white city anymore. Forgive me. But my point still stands about this being about demoralization and hopelessness. That's what I think anarcho-tyranny is. It is a brutal modern cudgel to control, break, and demoralize. And I think that's being wielded against people of the West. And I'm not saying it can't be used against everybody. It is, because when this stuff, anti-whiteism, white erasure, anarcho-tyranny, all this stuff, it's bad for everyone in the West, but it's especially bad for us because we don't have a homeland to go back to. We don't have anywhere to go.
Right. Okay. Let me continue.
Sorry.
This has become so bad in London that no one even bothers to call the police for burglaries, muggings, or theft anymore unless they need a police report for insurance. If you are burgled, the police will briefly attend, ask you what was stolen, then offer you a call with a police counsellor and do nothing more. Also, in the UK, there are no hard and fast rules for self-defense. Every case is taken upon its own merits, and although it is, quote, generally accepted that you have a right to self-defense in your own home, a right which was so weak that it had to be strengthened in 2013, as long as you don't use, quote, grossly disproportionate force and call the police as soon as the intruder is incapacitated. However, if the intruder is only trying to steal your property and is not attacking you, then it may be judged that the intruder did not present enough of a threat to justify the use of force. To complicate this picture, the legality of having any kind of weapon, even a baseball bat, by your door in case of home intruders is extremely murky. In the UK, having something that you intend to use as a weapon is illegal. Thus, the only way to defend yourself is to argue that you reached for something that was, quote, at hand in order to defend yourself. This is some more stuff from ChatGPT. I was a bit pressed for time. This is not legal advice, just to make this clear. So, intent and context. This is about UK self-defense law. In the home, the intent behind possessing an item like a baseball bat is crucial. If you have a bat by the door and can reasonably argue that it is there for playing baseball or for general home protection without any specific intent to use it to cause harm, it is typically not illegal. The law becomes more complicated if it can be proven that the primary purpose of having the item was to use it as a weapon. For example, modifications to a baseball bat to make it more lethal could indicate intent to use it as a weapon. 3. Reasonable force. If you use a baseball bat in self-defense during a home invasion, the same principles of reasonable force apply. The force used must be proportionate to the threat faced. Using the bat to incapacitate an intruder to prevent harm to yourself or others can be considered reasonable. However, if the intruder is incapacitated or fleeing and you continue to use the bat to inflict harm, this could be seen as excessive force, which means, of course, that you could be charged. Of course, one of the effects of these laws is to make it more likely that someone who is having their home invaded will freeze in the moment, worried about whether they will go to jail for defending themselves, therefore making it even more likely that the innocent will be injured or even killed. When I asked ChatGPT about this, it replied, yes, the lack of clear-cut guidelines and the fact that each case is treated individually can indeed create uncertainty and hesitation for victims who are under attack. This uncertainty might lead to several adverse outcomes. 1. The hesitation to act. Victims may freeze or hesitate to defend themselves due to fear of legal repercussions, resulting in an increased risk of harm. 2. Overreaction. Conversely, victims might use excessive force out of panic or fear, potentially leading to severe legal consequences. 3. Legal uncertainty. The subjective nature of what constitutes reasonable force can create anxiety and confusion, making it difficult for individuals to gauge how to act in high-stress situations. This is anarcho-tyranny. There are more laws governing the rights of the criminal than there are the rights of the victim. Most right-minded people would argue that a criminal loses all rights to state protection the moment they step into your home with the intent to steal or cause harm. But this
I
is not
definitely would
how
agree with that.
But this is not how the state sees it. Quite the opposite. To return to Sam Francis. The laws that are enforced are either those that extend or entrench the power of the state and its allies and internal elites, such as the police, military, the bureaucracies, the teaching and brainwashing class, the tax collectors, the professional social engineers whose business it is to design and implement the revolution, etc. Or else they are laws that directly punish those recalcitrant and, quote, pathological elements in society who insist on behaving according to traditional norms. People who do not like to pay taxes, wear seatbelts, or deliver their children to the mind-bending therapists who run the public schools. Or the people who own or keep firearms, display or even wear the Confederate flag, put up Christmas trees, spank their children, and quote the Constitution or the Bible. Not to mention dissident political figures who actually run for office and try to do something about the mass immigration by third world populations. Such dangerous elements are the main targets of the tyranny part of anarcho-tyranny. For that matter, they also happen to be the main targets of the anarchy part. The laws that do not get enforced are those that protect such elements and their families and communities, laws against immigration itself, as well as laws that are supposed to protect ordinary citizens against ordinary criminals. In the revolution, you see, the ordinary criminal, as well as the illegal immigrant, is at least an honorary member, if not a full-fledged officer of the revolutionary class, such as Marx's proletariat, or Herbert Marcuse's countercultural college students and hippies. By contrast, common hoodlums who commit rapes, robberies, and murders serve as the de facto field troops of the culture war. And it is hardly an accident that there is now a growing movement to extend the vote to those criminals, unlucky enough to have landed in prison, having served the revolutionary elite well. They deserve a promotion.
That's a really pithy line.
Yeah, it's a very good article, this.
Yeah.
And very pressy. I mean, you got to remember this was written in 2005, so
That's
he was
20 years ago now. That's a long
well
time
ahead
ago,
of his time. He's dead now. It's a shame because I bet he'd have some fascinating commentary on where we are now. In short, the police and courts in the UK have completely abandoned the idea of justice in favor of social justice. That toxic mix of leftist hand-wringing, self-abnegation, and Marxism that makes excuses for the criminal, as long as they are not white, of course, while punishing harshly the law-abiding. Having found it too hard to tackle the criminals who actually fight back, the police have decided that the best way to maintain the peace is to prosecute those that resist them, the criminals, that is. Back to Francis. Anarcho-tyranny, then, is not just a deformation of the traditional system of government, nor a symptom of, quote, decadence. The state today is perfectly capable of enforcing laws against illegal immigration and catching and deporting the illegals who are already here. It is also entirely capable of catching and imprisoning or executing the killers, rapists, and robbers who continue to haunt our streets and neighborhoods, just as it is entirely capable of catching speeders and red light runners. The conventional conservative explanation of such failures on the part of the state as a result of weakness of will or something does not wash. The state and those who control it clearly have the will to enforce those laws they wish to enforce. The state does not fail to enforce the rest of the laws. It has no intention of enforcing them, nor any desire to do so. Thus, anarcho-tyranny is entirely deliberate, a calculated transformation of the function of the state from one committed to protecting the law-abiding citizenry to a state that treats the law-abiding citizen as, at best, a social pathology and, at worst, as an enemy. Having captured the state apparatus, the anarcho-tyrants are the real hegemonic class in contemporary society, and their function is to formulate and construct the new culture of the new order they envision, a culture that rejects as repressive and pathological the traditional culture and civilization. Of course, once again echoing my observation that everything old is new again, none of this is new. Under the Bolsheviks in Russia, very similar laws were in place. This, by the way, is why I keep referring to the people who rule us as Bolsheviks. I am not just on some autistic tard trip. If you study the Bolsheviks, it is literally this, as I will demonstrate. To quote Gulag Archipelago by Alexander Solzhenitsyn. In the Criminal Code of 1926, so this would be less than 10 years after the Russian Revolution, there was a most stupid Article 139, quote, on the limits of necessary self-defense, according to which you had the right to unsheathe your knife only after the criminal's knife was hovering over you, and you could stab him only after he had stabbed you. Otherwise, you would be the one put on trial. And there was no article in our legislation saying that the greater criminal was the one who attacked someone weaker than himself. This fear of exceeding the measure of necessary self-defense led to total spinelessness as a national characteristic. A hoodlum once began to beat up the Red Army man Alexander Zakharov outside a club. Zakharov took out a folding penknife and killed the hoodlum, and for this he got 10 years for plain murder. And what was I supposed to do? He asked, astonished. Prosecutor Artashevsky replied, you should have fled. So tell me, who creates the hoodlums?
Who indeed?
Also under the Bolsheviks, the penalty for criminals versus ordinary citizens, especially if you did not have any connection to the party, were wildly different. For example, your punishment for having a knife when they searched you as a dissident would be very different from the thief's. For him to have a knife was mere misbehavior, tradition. He didn't know any better. But for you to have one was, quote, terrorism. This process has been going on in the UK for years. This, for example, is from the Daily Mail in 2008. Doubtless, this is an earlier strain of what areas blighted by black knife crime need. Sorry, this is obviously an earlier strain of the refrain that what areas blighted by black knife crime need is more youth centers and basketball courts. Quote, the Sentencing Advisory Panel appeared to adopt a diametrically opposed stance in its latest report today, claiming the best way to reduce the use of knives was to focus on, quote, social factors, such as young people's fears of becoming victims of violence, adding, quote, changes in prosecution or sentencing practice are likely to have a lesser impact. Youths caught carrying knives should not be jailed for their first offense if they plead guilty. By youths, by the way, like there is an obvious racial element, the panel claimed, and should be given community sentences such as referral orders, quote, in most circumstances. Locking up young offenders should be a measure, quote, of last resort, according to the panel of barristers, judges, and academics, and the younger the criminal, the less time they should spend in custody, the report adds. It is differential treatment like this, combined with mass migration, that has led to a state of two-tier policing in the UK, something which is now bursting to the forefront and bedeviling Labour PM Keir Starmer, or two-tier Keir, as he is now known. To be fair, however, it is not as though the Conservatives have done much better. Indeed, it seems to have been an oddly prescient move by Rishi Sunak to call an early election and lose in such a spectacular fashion before the entire country exploded. Although Labour is being blamed for the current state of the United Kingdom, as you can see from the above, the current state has been a long time in the making. The assumption, of course, by many voters was that Labour would fix the problems that the Conservatives had failed to fix. They are now discovering that this is not the case. In its first month in office, the Labour government has announced the cutting of winter fuel subsidies for the poor, at the same time as ramping up net zero measures which will make energy more expensive, and announced the resettlement of 5,000 Afghanis, rising to 20,000 in the next few years. It is not clear if this also includes families, in which case the numbers could be much, much higher. It has also announced that it will sign on to the EU Migration Pact, which will force the UK to take a set percentage of all EU migrant flows.
God.
The numbers that each country will take are decided by how much, quote, free space it is decided that each country has based on population density, which is why Ireland is currently being swamped by immigrants, because it has been decided that Ireland has plenty of space. Of course, these migrants wind up first in the cities and are then distributed to outlying areas. Labour have also announced that all migrants being held in migrant centres are to be, quote, distributed among the community, as well as an intention to release thousands of criminals from UK jails because of overcrowding, while at the same time magically being able to find more prison places for rioters by refurbishing old buildings. And to rioters, I should also add social media posters. It is hard to imagine what more the government could do to attack the white English working class. Every opportunity to take in more migrants is taken, while at the same time there is an army of human rights lawyers standing ready to spend hundreds of thousands on legal fees to ensure that not one migrant is ever deported, no matter what horrific crimes they have committed against the local population. At the same time as laws upon the law-abiding population are ever tightened, laws upon the immigrants are loosened. Those that are caught are frequently simply let go on the most flimsy of pretexts, such as being released because they don't speak English or didn't understand that what they did was a crime, a defense that would never be countenanced when it comes to the white English. Those that are caught are frequently given the most minor sentences, a situation that mirrors the US, except that in the UK, instead of having district attorneys that can be voted out, the legal profession is highly insulated and cannot be removed. And here's a recent article. This is only from a couple of days ago. Agony for mother of teen killed in machete attack after learning one of his killers will be released after just 6 months due to prison overcrowding under new Labour scheme. I will leave it to yourself to guess the racial composition of the murderer in that case. This is two-tier policing. This is anarcho-tyranny. There is one rule for the white natives and another rule for everyone else. UK society has now devolved into the situation where there is a pecking order hierarchy based upon the number of protected characteristics that you can lay claim to. Kimberly Crenshaw's communist vision of intersectionality has finally become a reality, and now the first thing that will decide your fate when it comes to the law is not whether you were aggressor or victim, but where you stand in the intersectional hierarchy. It is for this reason that the English are rioting. All appeals to calm have failed after all. If they do nothing, things will continue to get worse. And if they riot, things will also continue to get worse. Indeed, we are now seeing the backlash of government, naming and shaming people who were in the riots as though they were child rapists and murderers. I would like to remind viewers that, to my knowledge, not one person has died so far in the riots. Presumably, if even one person had been killed, it would be all over the news 24 hours a day. In terms of the intensity of unrest, the English riots are relatively low. As I outlined in my piece on sixth generation warfare, the government is now at war with its own citizenry. Having systematically infiltrated and demolished all organized centers of resistance, all that is left is the spontaneous backlash from the native population. This operation has been so effective that the government has been forced to resurrect the boogeyman of the English Defence League, an organization that has not been in existence for over 10 years, as a way to demonize those who resist. One might posit that the smart move would have been to do as Felix Dzerzhinsky did in the USSR, and keep a couple of these organizations around, fully infiltrated and under the control of the security services, to provide an appropriate enemy when convenient and to draw out those who go against the government. Instead, however, the security services have smashed all organized resistance and engaged in so much subversion that no one in their right mind would join any kind of organization in current year because of the certainty that it had been penetrated or indeed actually set up by the security services. These riots will provide the perfect spur for the Labour government to introduce even more authoritarian measures upon the local British population. Of course, as usual, there will be carve-outs in the new laws for the client groups of the regime. Immigrants will continue to run riot without any repercussions, while the white English will increasingly be criminalized for the most minor offences. Social media is the next target in the government's sight, perpetuating the time-honoured tradition that it is not the problem that is the problem, it is people talking about the problem. The Labour government clearly wants to go back to the COVID years, where they had a team of glowies installed in every social media company who would remove people with an email. Might I also add that if the UK gets its wish, this will affect Americans too. Once such a team is installed, it will be a matter of weeks before they are also taking requests at the behest of their American Glow cousins, something that the Twitter files amply illustrated. One must wonder whether in a year it will even be possible to criticize the government if you are not working for a large media organization with substantial legal backing, and it is highly likely that such outlets will retreat to the position that you may criticize, but let's not use any harsh language. You may criticize, but let's keep it civil, which means, of course, that the government will ignore them entirely. The next revolution is fast approaching. Indeed, it may already be here. In the future, 1,000 papers on authoritarian control will be written by thousands of university students and think tanks that will start with the line, quote, "In 2024, the UK riots, fueled by disinformation, demonstrated the need to control social media. Therefore, ... As I write this, the situation is relatively stable. But there are many protests scheduled for tonight, and it will only take one serious incident, a group of people killed by fire, a Muslim mob being attacked, rumors of a killing to kick things into a truly apocalyptic mode. The government has now painted itself into a corner. They dare not give any ground on the grievances of the English, because to do so would humanize their enemy. Also, as soon as they acknowledge one concern, they know that many others will be following behind it. Following the Trudeau model of governance, Starmer has decided that the most appropriate way to deal with the unrest is more of the same thing that caused it. You may call me a conspiracy theorist, but I do not believe these events are accidental. The forces behind them have been well understood for years by social engineers, and while the blacks or the Muslims not having their concerns addressed is seen as a tragedy, the concerns of the white working class are seen as dangerous, racist, far right, and must be crushed with the full force of the law. In closing, I would like to note that those who have studied English history will note that it was precisely this kind of escalation to violence that modern policing was supposed to prevent. Modern police were supposed to be the people of the community who could address concerns before they spiraled out of control. Originally, the only force the government had was soldiers, and after unrest broke out, usually due to poor harvests and the highly controlled economy around wheat, which was known as the Corn Laws, the government would send soldiers whose only option was to fire upon the citizenry, which would produce even more unrest. Starmer seems to be speedrunning this very dynamic, and if it gets much worse, it will not be long before we see soldiers on the streets of the UK. If they then fire upon the citizenry and deaths result, the outcome will be apocalyptic. My dear American brothers, pray for us. We are in truly dark times indeed. Thank you.
I really liked your presentation, Chris. Oh yeah.
Thanks.
It was, and I don't want you to take this the wrong way, but I've kind of been in a funk of impotent rage and kind of hopelessness all day after reading it and thinking on it all day, because there is no easy fix to this. The only way out is through, and it's going to be rough. It's going to be rough.
Yeah,
Go back.
I apologize for the blackmailing nature of my presentation, but I could not find a way to make this cheerful. I'm afraid.
No, and that's why I prefaced the stream the way I did, man, because this is important stuff that people need to understand. But at the same time, you guys have to understand, we're not going to vote our way out of this. This is not something that we can just easily fix. It's going to require a massive shift in desire, organization, motivation, etc. That's why I like. Well, I'll get to that in a minute. Let's go ahead and go to my first slide, the CNN one. And
I didn't preload your slides. Sorry, so I was just like loading them in.
That's okay. I saw you just put them in there. It's fine. Just start with the CNN one. I have them numbered.
The fiery, but mostly this is such a legendary meme.
Oh,
such
I know.
A legendary meme.
Yeah, yes. we're getting into the home stretch, guys. So I'm going to put up the reminder to get your paid chats in. We'll get to them after my my part of the presentation tonight. So, as you guys recall, during the rapacious, lethal, and devastating BLM riots of the so-called Summer of Love back in 2020, Anarcho-Tyranny was on full display in the United States to anyone paying even the slightest bit of attention. I want you to remember back in that time. That was 4 years ago now. I know it feels like forever ago, but it was only 4 years ago. Huge swaths of angry, masked and unmasked people caused billions of dollars worth of damage to American cities, cost dozens of lives, led to hundreds being severely injured and raped, and thousands of people's livelihoods permanently damaged, not to mention the damage done to American society at large. These protests took place during the peak of the COVID craze. Go ahead and go to the next slide now. The Fauci one. Oh, no, that's not the Fauci one. It's this one. Yeah, that's right. I forgot. These protests took place during the peak of the COVID craze, where we were all being gaslit about masks, social distancing, and so-called vaccines and boosters. Now go to the Fauci one. Oh, I must have had them out of order then. I thought that the Fauci one was next.
Wait, hang on. Let me double check. I'm pretty
That's
sure
okay.
that's
It doesn't really matter. These are just things to make people remember the time, because this was 4 years ago, and I know that to those of you that have been paying attention, it feels like forever ago. But I need you to remember these things.
Do you mean this one?
No, I thought I had a Fauci one in there from.
No, you didn't. You didn't.
I swear I did. Hold on.
No. Oh yeah, no. The Fauci one's the last one. Hang on.
Oh,
there we go.
I must have sent them out of order or something. Then I'm sorry.
It's all good. It's all good.
But let's go ahead and scroll back. Then let's just do them in order that you've got them. It's fine. Go to the one that's the 4-panel one. That's fine. I'm sorry, Chris.
That's all right.
The protests that took place during the peak of the COVID craze, where we were all being gaslit about masks, social distancing, and the so-called vaccines and boosters, we were told that going to church, having a barbecue with your family, or attending a political rally were all dangerous. And do you remember what they called us? Do you remember what they called these events? The clever people in the class will remember. They told us we were being immoral, selfish people. Think of grandma. Think of those sick people. Let's see if anybody can remember what they called us in chat here. Let's see. Anybody remember? I'm looking at chat right now. Not that, Miss Coppertone. There we go. Tailfin got it first. Good job, Tailfin. Yeah, go ahead and move to the next one. The next slide for me. Yep. Super spreader events. That's what they called them. Meanwhile, the same media pushing the mind war, the anti-white narrative against law-abiding citizens, blatantly excluded BLM riots from these so-called super spreader events, didn't they? They spoke about these protests as a natural, normal pushback against white supremacy and white culture and the oppression of non-white people or people of color, because people of color excludes us, doesn't it? They said, these aren't super spreader events. They didn't even say super spreader events in the same headlines or talking about it on the news. It was like there were two different realities we were observing in the media. One was calling regular law-abiding citizens, white and non-white, guilty and evil for not being part of their narrative, this evil anti-white revolutionary stuff. And then on the other side of the news, they talked about these protests like they were a good thing. And in a lot of ways, it was like the COVID stuff didn't even exist when they talked about the BLM stuff.
Do you remember when they expressly said that going to a BLM protest would not spread COVID?
Yes, yes, I do remember that. I tried to find the screenshot of that, but I couldn't find the good one. But I do remember them saying that. They might have scrubbed that.
Pepperidge Farm.
Pepperidge Farm remembers, sir.
Pepperidge Farm.
That I remember.
Mate, I remember when I saw that. I think that was one of my first tastes of like the true horror of the clown world. I was like, man. Yeah. So like oh man, yeah. sorry, please go.
That's all right. That's all right. Go ahead and go to the Fauci one. I think that one's last, isn't it? I think that's after this one. Yeah. So actually let's just go to Embiggen View. We're done with the slides. I just wanted to show those to make you guys remember. And Pepperidge Farm definitely remembers. Now, we'll go ahead and finish up here. Yeah, here we go. Yeah, I just finished up with the two separate medias, the two separate realities that the media covered back then. That's Anarcho-Tyranny. That is Anarcho-Tyranny via media. Hundreds of Antifa BLM activists were arrested during this period, but almost none of them received sentences. A few of them got some minor token sentences, slaps on the wrist. Meanwhile, thousands of righteously indignant white and non-white Americans, mostly white though, lost their jobs, some even their families, over refusing to honor the corrupt mandates of the lockdowns and the COVID lunacy. Our lives were disrupted. Our children were permanently psychologically damaged by all of the uproar, the masking, etc. Our cities were terrorized, vandalized. Our bodies were violated by harmful experimental substances, all under this corrupt, evil system of psychological warfare, two-tier policing, or more accurately, anarcho-tyranny. Things get worse. I'm sorry, as things get worse, anarcho-tyranny becomes more evident, more blatant, and even more harmful. But as always, I do my best to end with a white pill or a word of hope. As our good friend in the OGC, the Old Glory Club, Jay Burden says, the lie can't last forever. And this is very true. Chris talked about this tonight as well. This ugly lie of democracy, the will of the people, the lies of anti-whiteism and people of color, the never-ending storm of lies that this regime uses to keep us disempowered, demoralized, and disenfranchised. They won't last. The very structure upon which it relies, like Chris talked about, is the passive public acceptance of the narrative. But it's all gone now. The whipping boy, the EDL, the KKK in America, the Proud Boys, these things have all been destroyed, subverted, and in many cases created by the feds themselves and then discarded. The narrative is gone. It's just normal people being terrorized now, gaslit, punished every day. The illusion is breaking. The mask has not just been taken off, it's been smashed against the ground, never to be put on again. Every day, hundreds, maybe thousands more of our people are gaining the courage to say something where before they kept silent. Fewer taking action, and sadly, many take harmful, foolish actions, like joining mass protests or worse, committing counterterrorism. But there are those who are taking healthy, wise actions. And I want all of you, dear listeners, whether listening live or on replay, to be among the intelligent, wise people who take action. And for the wrap up of my talk, I don't have prepared because I just wanted to talk from the heart. There are two main groups of people that I associate with in this sphere of dissidence: the Old Glory Club people and the White Well-Being people. Jason Kuna, the leader of the White Well-Being group or movement or whatever, is with us tonight in chat. So are a lot of the people that are primary actors within the White Well-Being community. The Old Glory Club you guys know about. I talk to lots of them. They're on my Monday night show. But what you don't know if you just listen and you're not involved in the offline stuff that we do, what you don't know is all the things that we do, the connections, the family building, the community building. I'm going to start with the White Well-Being community. Jason recently has had tremendous success with getting over 1 million likes or 1 million engagements, I forget, on one of his tweets using the terms anti-white. He's the primary codifier of the Go Free lexicon, and his method is what I use with the words anti-white, anti-whiteism, white erasure, etc. He's had a tremendous success with that, and over the last decade, he's been teaching people how to go into their churches, their schools, where they work, using the right language in the right way to give people what they need to be mentally equipped with to intelligently and legally fight back against our victimization because of our race. He's done a great job. There are thousands of people that work day in and day out in the White Well-Being community, both online and offline, that create small groups called Go Free clubs. And in these clubs, they don't just support each other because of how hard it is to live in the current era, but they go out and they do things. Not violence, not terrorism. They do intelligent things, going to PTA meetings, going to churches, going into places that have obviously anti-white signs or literature up and telling them why it's bad and they should stop. This works. This is good. This is wise, healthy action. Then let's go to the Old Glory Club. The purpose of the Old Glory Club is not just to have a fun stream like Pony Express Radio. It's not just to throw these big expensive events once a year where we can all smoke cigars and pat each other on the back. That's not what the Old Glory Club is for. What it's for is to take back our damn country and make it work again, make it for us again. But you don't do that with vigilante violence. You don't do that with terrorism. And you certainly don't do that by just voting for the Republicans again. Look where they've got us. Same way with the rotten Tories in the UK. No, the motivated minority that is organized, has a plan, and has reach and connection is what you need to actually change a corrupt, bad system. And that is the purpose of the Old Glory Club. We already have multiple, excuse me, chapter houses that are legitimate, and I think 3 or 4 states now. And I think by the end of the year, that's going to be over 10. The purpose of these groups is like I mentioned earlier with the Go Free clubs, to get motivated people together that know each other and take coordinated action to achieve results in academia, in government, and in business. In the Old Glory Club, we have men who have bought hundreds, if not thousands, of acres of land altogether. We are intelligently and legally creating private clubs and communities that can resist the anti-white nature of the federal law that's going on right now. We make it a point to be friends with sheriffs, local law enforcement, local schools, chapter houses of other fraternities. And in doing that, we're creating a network, a connection of motivated, intelligent, law-abiding people that are going to hopefully have some measure of at least local at first and maybe state-level institutional influence in a very short period of time. This is what I recommend you get involved with if you really care. Find what you can find where you live to get involved in something like that. Ask around. And a model that I like, that I'm not personally connected to at all, is what the people of AfriForum in South Africa have built. They have a network of community watch. They share intelligence. They share education, and in many cases, resources, because our people in South Africa have it really bad, and they know that. And they've been working together to try to have some measure of control and some measure of future for their people there. Things aren't as bad in our places yet as they are in South Africa, but they could be very soon. Definitely in our lifetimes, maybe in the next few years even, in some areas, depending on how bad it gets. The storm is going to be bad. I'm not sugarcoating it, but you can take action, intelligent, coordinated action, to make your life and the life of your children have the best chance possible. And that's using the Go Free method to protect yourself mentally and spiritually, using the Go Free lexicon to give yourself the best chance possible at not being busted for hate speech or saying no words by the anti-white establishment. Get involved with organizations like the Old Glory Club or other ones that are coordinating attack plans for taking back territory, cultural territory where you live. In my opinion, that is the best thing that you can do with your time if you are at all motivated to put your livelihood on the line to make a difference. You got to do it intelligently and wisely. I believe in my race. I believe in our people. I believe in the Anglo ethnicity. We have done great things, not just for ourselves and our own culture, but for the world, for technology, etc. We have survived wars and plagues and all this other stuff. I believe that we can have a future. How good that future is, however, is up in the air. So maybe you should do what you can to give us the best chance at a future worth living as possible. And our progeny will thank you for it. So that's what I've got tonight, Chris.
Nice. Could I just, I'd just like to end on a point, especially given what's going on in the UK.
Mm-hmm.
Violence against the state is not going to get you anywhere. I realize that many people don't want to hear this, but it is a fact. And the events in the UK recently have demonstrated this very, very clearly. In fact, if you want sort of my take on this, you can listen to our episode on sixth generational warfare, which goes into this in more detail. The only really effective resistance is to wreck the narrative machinery, which is to undermine the narratives that are being used to shape the populace. Now, you know, this is a highly asymmetrical endeavor, obviously. On the side of the state, you have large media corporations and also sort of large social engineering firms, PR firms, all of this kind of stuff. A million glow orgs are arrayed against you. However, the truth is a very powerful device. Once people hear the truth, most people, they cannot unhear it. They cannot get it out of their head. They may be able to ignore it. And indeed, as events continue to progress, people will get used to, have already gotten used to ignoring the truth. It is how you survive in a stupid society. Therefore, you are much better positioned rather than using violence to talk to people, to create. If you yourself cannot create new and novel theories, find someone whose theories that you respect and spread those theories. Make art, make music.
Mhm.
If particularly if you are in a country that does not have as restrictive laws as the United Kingdom, for example, you can provide tangible help by, making art or other things that undermine the narrative. Do not
Yeah.
do stupid stuff like 4chan recently started attacking police helplines. Don't do that. Like, I mean, it's just that is just really stupid. Like, what is that
Yeah.
going to what is that going to accomplish? Well, it's going to
Yeah.
accomplish the state having another excuse to pass even more
Yeah.
draconian laws on speech and expression.
It's the same reason why I tell you guys not to go to these protests, and certainly don't join like the Proud Boys used to be, these guys that go out looking for trouble. Most of the time, that's going to be feds and anti-white agents anyway orchestrating that stuff. But it's just stupid. And it not
You're,
only does it not help, it hurts. It feeds the anti-white narrative and ruins your life at the same time.
but not
Don't get
only that,
involved in this stuff.
you are not professionals at this. The people you are up against are professionals, particularly in the arena of violence. It's not a
Yeah.
it's not a good idea. You really
No.
don't, and I just, I want to make it clear. I am absolutely in no way advocating for violence. I am advocating for freedom of expression and the spreading of truth to undermine false narratives that are being deliberately propagated for social engineering reasons.
Yeah.
And hopefully that is not illegal yet. So
Yeah.
I guess we'll see.
Well, we have a lot of paid chats, so let's go ahead and get to these since we're already at the hour mark. Let's start over on Entropy with a very nice donation from my good friend Simon JJ, longtime friend of mine and financial supporter. Simon sends in 50 US dollars. Thank
Oh,
you so
Simon,
much.
thank you, man. Oh,
Yeah,
thank you so much, bro.
let's get a white heart and a salute for Simon in the chat, man, because
Yeah.
Simon's been around for a long time, and I know that he takes this stuff seriously and it weighs on him heavily like it does me. He's a kindred spirit. So thank you, Simon. For 50 US dollars, he says, excellent presentation tonight, Newsfist, and thank you both for this hard-hitting stream.
Thanks very much, Simon. I really appreciate that, mate.
Yeah, thank you, Simon. And I'm glad you appreciate it. And I know it's hard, man. Just hang in there. All right, next up on Entropy, we have Kizza, our friend Kizza, back in again for $5 US. Thank you, Kizza. He says, the current events makes me crave the crown and go full rip and tear until the tree of liberty is drowning in the blood of traitors, that the world will be praying to God that I don't start a war that will end all wars. Britannia must return. I appreciate that sentiment. And I mean, as much as we all crave fair, open warfare and to be noble knights that fight evil, our enemies are going to deprive us of that opportunity to the best of their ability. So I understand that sentiment, and spiritually, I'm with you. But like we talked about earlier, the time for violence on our side is certainly not now. It would not work for us now at all. But thank you, Kiz. I do appreciate your fervor and your dollars. Thank you
Thanks,
so
mate.
much. All right, let's move now over to PayPal. We have one from Dawn Sanderson. Thank you so much, Dawn. Or is it Dawn Browning? I think it's Dawn. I have a lot of Dawns that follow me. Let me see. I think Dawn's in the chat. Yeah, it's Dawn Browning. There it is. Yeah. Dawn sends in 10 US dollars. Thank you so much. And she just says, we will win. And she sends in a huggy emoji and a whole bunch of white hearts. Thank you so much, Dawn.
Thanks, Dawn.
And let's see, we have any new tips tonight over on Subscribestar. I just refreshed. Let's see. Sometimes we get one from June. And we do have one from June tonight. June M sends in for $5 US over on Subscribestar. She says, thank you both for your valuable work. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, June. It means a lot. Thank you so much. Over on, as a hyper chat on Odyssey, we have, it's Young at Heart, spelled like Carl Young. Young at Heart sends in 10 US on Odyssey via a hyper chat and just says, thanks for all your work. Well, you're welcome.
Thanks, mate. Sorry, I'm not following the Odyssey chat. 2 at once is about the most I can manage when I'm like doing this.
And last but certainly not least, Jason Kuna, the No White Guilt guy, he sends in $6 on Cash App to say, this is how bad it's gotten. And yeah, folk tithing Kip. Yes, Jason, it has gotten very bad.
Thanks, Jason. I appreciate the fundage, man.
Yeah, thank you so much, man. And as always, thank you for the Go Free method. It has helped me and lots of my friends be able to have the words and the mental framework to actually cogitate on this stuff. Thank you again for the method, man. All right, well, we've come to the end of the stream, and we talked a little long tonight. I know that this is heavy stuff, but the only way out is through. So keep heart and speak the truth to all who have the ears to hear it, and be wise and cunning in this dangerous age we live in, and teach your children and friends to be that way too. And we do that, and well, we just might have a chance. So.
Oh, and wait, I should post the link to the Sixth General Warfare episode as well.
Yeah, that's a very good episode.
If you don't have anything to do after this, you could always go and watch that. I hear it's pretty good. Some rando told me that they enjoyed it. Of course, I would have no idea. But yes,
our good friend Ardent Party up in Newfoundland says that he heard from a reliable source that regularly watching Empire of Lies can in fact cure cancer. So
Empire of Lies does not cure cancer. Talk to your doctor and see if Empire of Lies is right for you. They cause black killing, bloating, and anal leakage.
With that funny joke, let's go ahead and close her up here. Thank you guys for supporting us, and thank you for caring enough to at least listen, and I hope that you care enough to take some kind of sensible, intelligent action to make things better where you live. Don't be so invested in big movements. Be focused on what you can do on a small scale around you, and network with like-minded people. We will be back Monday night with Discordant Dragons and the Habiting TV over on Newsfist channel. So good night, everybody. Have a great weekend. God bless.
Thanks very much for coming, everyone. Have a great weekend.
Good night.
Good night.